The morning sun spills through the glass windows of St. Helena Medical Center, reflecting off the polished floors as doctors rush past in crisp white coats. Among them, one man stands out, Drive. Adrian Cole. At 42, he's already one of the most respected surgeons in the city. With calm precision and unmatched skill, he's saved countless lives, earning admiration from both colleagues and patients. His colleagues often say that when Dr. Cole enters an operating room, it feels like everything slows down, his movements deliberate, confident, and almost graceful. But lately, something has changed. Nurses whisper that he seems distracted, his usual warmth replaced with quiet tension. He spends long hours alone in his office, lights flickering under the door late into the night. That day in early March 2012, Drive. Cole completes what should have been a routine cardiac surgery. The operation is flawless, the patient stable. But instead of heading to the lounge or going home as usual, he disappears into the hospital's records room, clutching a sealed file. A janitor passing by catches a glimpse of him muttering to himself, his face pale, his eyes darting nervously toward the security cameras. Later, Drive. Cole is seen walking briskly through the corridor, avoiding conversation. He stops briefly by the nurse's station, signs a document, and gives a faint smile, one that doesn't quite reach his eyes. As night falls, the hospital empties. The security guard on duty remembers seeing Drive. Cole's car still in the parking lot when he began his shift. By morning, it's still there, but the doctor isn't. His locker is untouched, his keys left in the ignition, and his cell phone sits on his desk, screen glowing with a half-written message that reads, "If something happens to me," but cuts off mid-sentence. Police are called in, and the staff gathers in disbelief as word spreads, Drive. Cole is missing. No signs of struggle, no trace of departure, and no explanation. It's as if he simply vanished into thin air, leaving behind a mystery that would haunt the hospital for years to come. The days following Drive. Adrian Cole's disappearance are filled with confusion and unease. The hospital, once a place of constant rhythm and routine, feels heavy and uncertain. Detectives swarm the corridors, questioning nurses, surgeons, and administrators. They go through his office, searching every drawer, every cabinet, and every note left behind. But nothing points to where he went or why he vanished. His car remains parked in the same spot, the driver's seat pushed back just slightly as if he had sat there moments before disappearing. Inside, police find his stethoscope and a coffee cup still half full, now cold and stale. His locker is opened in front of his closest colleague, Drive. Marcus Hale. Inside are only a few items, a change of clothes, a small photograph of his daughter from years ago, and an unmarked envelope. The envelope contains nothing but a blank sheet of paper, though under ultraviolet light, faint impressions of handwriting appear, as if someone had written a message and later erased it. Detectives send it to the lab, hoping for clues, but the results come back inconclusive. There are no fingerprints other than his own. The media quickly catches wind of the story. News outlets label it, the vanishing surgeon case. Some speculate he fled the country after being accused of malpractice, while others suggest something darker, perhaps a cover-up, or even foul play by someone inside the hospital. But those who knew him best refuse to believe he ran away. Dr. Cole was disciplined, deeply devoted to his patients, and showed no signs of financial or personal trouble. His ex-wife, when questioned, insists he'd recently mentioned he was close to uncovering something big, though she didn't know what he meant. Weeks turn into months. Without leads, the investigation slows. The hospital administration quietly replaces his nameplate, his office repurposed for another doctor. The staff are told to move on, but whispers linger in the halls, that sometimes, late at night, the motion sensors near the old records room still go off, even when no one's there. Some say it's faulty wiring. Others aren't so sure. Dr. Cole's disappearance becomes an unsolved chapter in the hospital's history, one that no one dares to bring up, though no one can quite forget. 5 years later, the memory of Dr. Adrian Cole has faded into little more than hospital gossip. Most of the staff who once knew him have moved on, and St. Helena Medical Center has undergone renovations that seem to erase the past. It's now 2017, and on an unusually stormy evening, the emergency ward is flooded with patients. Among them is Thomas Gray, a 54-year-old man doubled over in pain, clutching his abdomen as paramedics wheel him in. He's sweating, pale, and gasping for breath. The triage nurse notes his blood pressure is dangerously low, and his scans reveal something unusual, a dense, irregular shadow deep within his abdominal cavity that doesn't match any normal growth or mass. Dr. Lena Moore, a young but highly skilled surgeon, is called in. Known for her sharp instincts and steady hands, she reviews the scans and frowns. The object inside Thomas's body looks man-made, metallic even, but it's too deep to identify without surgery. There's no record of any foreign object from his previous medical history, except for an old surgery performed in 2012 by none other than Drive. Adrian Cole. The coincidence seems strange, but the team assumes it's unrelated. With no time to spare, Drive. More preps for emergency surgery. As thunder rumbles outside and the fluorescent lights flicker above, Thomas is wheeled into the operating room. The surgical team moves quickly, and Dr. Moore begins the procedure with calm precision. But the moment she opens the abdominal cavity, something feels wrong. The internal tissue shows signs of old scarring, not from natural healing, but from a deliberate incision that had been expertly stitched years ago. Her assistant murmurs nervously, "There's no record of this operation." Then, Drive. Moore's scalpel hits something solid. She pauses, leans closer, and gently clears away the tissue. Her eyes widen as she sees the edge of a small, rectangular object embedded deep inside. It's not a medical instrument, not a piece of metal, but something entirely different, a plastic card, fused into the scar tissue. Carefully, she extracts it with a pair of forceps, and under the surgical light, letters begin to emerge through the grime and dried blood. The team stares in disbelief as the name becomes visible, Drive. Adrian Cole. The room goes silent. The anesthesiologist glances up from the monitor, nurses exchange frightened looks, and Dr. Moore can feel her pulse in her throat. The missing surgeon's ID, untouched, real, and now lying on her gloved palm, had somehow been inside this man for 5 years. None of them speak for several moments. The only sound is the faint hum of the ventilator. Dr. Moore finally whispers, "Get security. Now." Within minutes, the sterile calm of the operating room turns into chaos. Hospital security rushes in, followed by a senior administrator and 2 detectives who happen to be on site for an unrelated case. Dr. Lena Moore stands frozen beside the operating table, still staring at the blood-stained ID card resting on a tray under the surgical lights. The edges are cracked, the plastic warped from years inside the human body, but the name is unmistakable, Drive. Adrian Cole. Department of Surgery. The same man who vanished without a trace 5 years ago. Detective Harris, a tall, graying investigator who remembers the original case, feels the air leave his lungs when he sees it. "That's impossible," he mutters, picking up the ID with tweezers and placing it carefully in an evidence bag. The operating room becomes a sealed crime scene. Nurses are escorted out, the patient is moved under sedation to recovery, and Dr. Moore is questioned immediately. Her voice trembles as she recounts every step of the procedure, how the scans showed an unknown object, how the tissue looked like it had been operated on before, how the ID was buried deep within scarred tissue that had clearly been healing for years. When asked if it could have been accidentally left behind, she shakes her head firmly. "This wasn't an accident," she says quietly. "It was placed there intentionally." The words hang heavy in the air. Forensic experts are called to photograph the scene, and the hospital's surgical records are pulled for review. As the night stretches on, whispers begin to spread among the staff. Some say Drive. Cole must have planted it himself before disappearing. Others suggest someone else put it there, someone who wanted to send a message. Down the hall, the administrators hold a closed-door meeting. The hospital's legal advisor insists the story must not reach the press until more is known. But it's too late. One nurse has already posted a cryptic message on social media about a discovery linked to the vanished surgeon. Within hours, journalists begin calling the hospital, and the long-cold mystery of Dr. Adrian Cole's disappearance suddenly explodes back into the public eye. Meanwhile, Detective Harris watches as forensic technicians clean the ID under ultraviolet light. The DNA samples match Drive. Cole's exactly. It's real. It's his. But that only raises a more disturbing question: if this card was inside a living patient for 5 years, how did it get there? And what else could still be hidden, waiting to be uncovered? By dawn, the hospital is under lockdown. Reporters crowd the main entrance, flashing cameras through the rain-slicked glass doors as police tape seals off the surgical wing. Inside, investigators work through the night, piecing together the impossible. Dr. Lena Moore hasn't slept. Her hands still tremble when she remembers pulling the ID from inside the patient's body, the weight of it, the way everyone froze. She's questioned again by Detective Harris, who looks exhausted but focused. He lays out old photos of Dr. Adrian Cole on the table, alongside files from his disappearance. "You're sure it was embedded intentionally?" he asks again. Dr. Moore nods slowly. "The tissue had healed around it. It's been there for years. Someone placed it during surgery, and that someone had to know exactly what they were doing." The name of the patient, Thomas Gray, becomes the new focal point. Investigators dig into his medical history, pulling records from a decade ago. What they find sends chills down their spines. He was operated on in 2012, for the same abdominal area, and the surgeon listed on the chart was Dr. Adrian Cole. The procedure had been described as a routine exploratory surgery, but the report lacks details and signatures. It's incomplete, almost as if someone tried to erase it. Detective Harris reads the old report, tapping his pen against the paper. So the man who vanished performed the first surgery on the man who now had his ID inside him. That's not a coincidence. As police examine the files, they discover that the 2012 surgery occurred just 2 weeks before Drive. Cole disappeared. Thomas Gray had come in for abdominal pain and was kept overnight for observation. There's no follow-up record, no discharge summary, no billing. Everything after that date was removed from the hospital's database. It's as if someone wiped the event clean. Dr. Moore listens quietly as the detectives discuss possibilities. Did Drive Cole implant something else inside the patient? Was he experimenting on him? Or did someone use the same patient years later to cover up a crime? Meanwhile, Thomas Gray lies unconscious in recovery, unaware of the storm surrounding him. His vitals are stable, but the hospital has placed guards at his door. Detectives plan to question him the moment he wakes up. Dr. Moore, still shaken, sits alone in the staff lounge, staring at the rain pounding against the window. She replays the surgery in her mind again and again, the precise placement of the ID, the old surgical scars, the strange stillness of the moment she found it. One question refuses to leave her thoughts: if Dr. Cole's ID was hidden inside a patient, what else did he hide? And why did he choose Thomas Gray? Late that afternoon, the rain finally stops, and sunlight filters weakly through the blinds of Thomas Gray's hospital room. Machines hum softly beside his bed, their rhythmic beeping the only sound in the sterile air. After hours of uneasy silence, Thomas begins to stir. His eyes flutter open, clouded and confused, and he winces at the pain in his abdomen. A nurse immediately calls for Dr. Lena Moore and Detective Harris, who arrive moments later. The patient looks pale but alert, his voice hoarse as he whispers, "What happened to me?" Dr. Moore takes a deep breath, unsure how much to reveal. She explains gently that the surgery was successful, that they removed something unexpected from his abdomen. Thomas frowns, still dazed, but his confusion deepens when Detective Harris steps forward and places a sealed evidence bag on the bedside table. Inside, visible through the clear plastic, is the old ID card bearing the face of Dr. Adrian Cole. Thomas stares at it for a long time, his lips trembling slightly. "That's my old doctor," he mutters. "He operated on me years ago. Why do you have that?" Harris studies him carefully. "That's exactly what we want to know. This was found inside you during the surgery." Thomas's eyes widen, disbelief flashing across his face. "Inside me? That's impossible." He tries to sit up but groans in pain, clutching his side. Dr. Moore steadies him, urging him to stay calm. "Do you remember anything unusual about your last operation with Dr. Cole?" she asks softly. Thomas hesitates, his brow furrowing as fragments of memory return. He recalls being admitted in 2012 for stomach pain. Dr. Cole had seemed nervous, pacing before the operation, muttering about doing the right thing, and not letting them win. Thomas remembers waking up afterward to find strange bruising and being told it was normal. He also remembers that Dr. Cole visited him late one night, long after visiting hours, and whispered something he can't quite recall, Something about keeping quiet, about being safe. Detective Harris leans in. Did he ever mention who they were? Thomas shakes his head weakly. No, but I think he was scared. Really scared. His voice trembles as he continues. He told me that if anyone ever asked about that surgery, I should say I didn't remember anything. He pauses, his expression distant. A few days later, I saw on the news that he'd gone missing. The room falls silent again, heavy with realization. Dr. Moore exchanges a tense glance with Harris. It's clear now that Dr. Cole's disappearance and Thomas's surgery were connected. But if Dr. Cole was frightened, hiding something, then what had he really done during that operation? And more importantly, why had his ID been sealed inside the very man he once tried to protect? The answers, it seems, are buried deeper than anyone imagined. As the investigation deepens, the hospital becomes the center of a growing storm. Journalists crowd outside, headlines scream about the surgeon's secret, and conspiracy theories flood social media. Inside, detectives work tirelessly through stacks of old files and digital archives, trying to piece together the final days of Dr. Adrian Cole. What they find paints a far darker picture than anyone expected. Records show that in the months before his disappearance, Cole had been in contact with a private biotech company called Genetech Research, a firm specializing in experimental medical technology. At first glance, it looks legitimate, but further digging reveals multiple lawsuits, all sealed, involving unauthorized human testing. Detective Harris and Dr. Lena Moore sit in the hospital's records room late at night, surrounded by dusty folders and old data drives. On one of the drives, labeled Cole, Confidential, they find encrypted files that IT specialists eventually unlock. Inside are patient lists, coded by initials and numbers, each referencing implant trials and prototype tracking devices. Thomas Gray's initials appear twice. Dr. Moore's stomach twists as she scrolls through the files. There are images of microchips no larger than a grain of rice, designed to transmit biological data directly to remote servers. The technology is years ahead of its time, something that shouldn't have existed in 2012. One document stands out, a memo from Genetech to Dr. Cole, dated 2 weeks before he vanished. It thanks him for his cooperation, and warns that termination of collaboration without authorization will result in permanent consequences. Harris frowns, reading the line over again. He was trying to back out, he mutters. And they threatened him for it. Dr. Moore leans back, realizing what this means. Dr. Cole hadn't disappeared voluntarily, he'd been silenced. Meanwhile, forensic analysts continue examining the ID card. They discover microscopic traces of metal inside its plastic layers, fragments of the same alloy used in Genetech's prototype chips. It wasn't just an identification card. It was a piece of evidence, possibly containing data. When investigators connect the ID to a specialized reader, it emits a faint electronic signal, still active after all these years. Whatever drive Cole had hidden inside Thomas Gray wasn't just a card, it was a message, a warning encoded in technology no one was supposed to find. Detective Harris runs a hand over his face, realizing the enormity of what they've uncovered. He must have known they were after him, he says quietly. So he hid the proof somewhere no one would ever think to look, inside one of his patients. Dr. Moore feels a chill crawl up her spine. The more they learn, the more it seems drive. Cole was not a criminal but a whistleblower, one who paid the ultimate price for trying to expose the truth. Yet the question remains, if he hid evidence so carefully, did he plan for someone to find it? Or was this discovery never meant to happen at all? The next morning, the investigation reaches a critical turning point. The encrypted signal from Dr. Cole's ID leads the detectives to a small set of coordinates embedded in the chip's data. When the location is decoded, it points to the outskirts of the city, an abandoned medical storage facility that once belonged to Genetech Research. Detective Harris assembles a small team, including Lena Moore, and they drive out to the site under a gray, overcast sky. The building stands half collapsed, its windows shattered, rust streaking down the concrete walls. The air inside smells of dust, chemicals, and decay. It's been untouched for years, yet the electricity still hums faintly, as though someone had returned recently. With flashlights in hand, they move cautiously through the dark corridors lined with broken shelves and scattered medical equipment. Old patient files litter the floor, soaked by leaks in the roof. Dr. Moore picks up a folder marked, Implantation Data, Series 12C. The date reads 2012. Her breath catches, this was the same year drive. Cole vanished. They follow the sound of dripping water deeper into the facility until they reach a locked steel door. Harris forces it open with a crowbar, revealing a small room lined with filing cabinets, a desk, and several dusty hard drives stacked on top of one another. On the wall, faintly illuminated by their flashlights, are photographs of surgical rooms, patients, and medical schematics, all marked with Dr. Cole's handwriting. On the desk sits an old camcorder, its battery long dead but the memory card still inside. They carefully remove it and play the contents back on a portable screen. The footage flickers to life, showing Drive. Adrian Cole himself, sitting in the same room they're standing in now. His face is gaunt, his eyes hollow with exhaustion and fear. "If you're watching this," he begins, his voice trembling, "then I didn't make it out." He explains that he uncovered illegal human experiments being conducted by Genetech under the guise of surgical research, experiments that used patients like Thomas Gray as test subjects without their consent. He claims the microchips weren't meant to monitor health, they were designed for something far worse: behavioral tracking, manipulation, and control. He looks directly into the camera. "They found out I was going to expose them," he says, his voice breaking. "I had to hide proof where no one would think to look, inside the body of someone who could survive." Inside the living, the last thing the video shows is Dr. Cole turning sharply toward the door, as if someone has entered the room, before the screen cuts to static. Dr. Moore steps back, her heart pounding. Detective Harris exhales slowly, the reality settling over him. The ID card wasn't just an accident, and it wasn't a message meant for them. It was evidence of a conspiracy that had cost Drive Cole his life. The room feels colder now, haunted not just by the past but by the truth that had been buried with surgical precision. As they collect the hard drives and evidence, one chilling thought echoes in Dr. Moore's mind: if Genetech went this far to silence one man, who's to say they ever stopped? The days that follow are a blur of chaos, secrecy, and mounting fear. The discovery at the abandoned Genetech facility sends shockwaves through the medical and law enforcement communities. Federal agents take over the case, sealing all evidence and placing a gag order on everyone involved. Dr. Lena Moore is told to return to her duties and to forget what she saw, but she can't. Every time she closes her eyes, she sees Drive Cole's haunted face in that final video. Here's the desperation in his voice when he said, "Inside the living." Detective Harris, refusing to let the case die, continues his investigation quietly, digging deeper into Genetech's financial and corporate links. He learns that the company never truly shut down, it simply changed names, merging with a new research group that now supplies biometric data to major hospitals across the country. The same technology Drive Cole warned about is now being used openly, under the label of advanced patient monitoring. The implications are terrifying. One night, Drive Moore receives an encrypted email from an unknown sender. The subject line reads, "He was right." Attached is a video file. When she opens it, her heart stops. The footage shows a modern operating room. Sleek, high-tech, and active. A team of surgeons in unmarked uniforms are performing a procedure identical to the one Drive Cole described, implanting microdevices into a sedated patient. The file metadata shows the recording is recent, from just 2 weeks ago. It means the experiments never stopped. She calls Detective Harris immediately. They meet in a quiet parking lot outside the city, their faces lit by the pale glow of his car's dashboard. Harris looks grim, older somehow. "They're still doing it, Drive Moore says, her voice shaking. Harris nods. "And if we go public, they'll come for us too." He pulls out a flash drive containing copies of all the data they recovered before the government took control of the case. Cole risked everything to get this out. "We can't let it die with him." But even as they talk, both sense they're being watched. A black SUV sits idling across the lot, its windows tinted. Harris tenses. "We need to move, now." He starts the car, but before they can leave, Drive Moore's phone buzzes. A new message appears on the screen, with no sender ID, "Stop digging." or you'll disappear like him. The color drains from her face. Harris slams the accelerator, tires screeching as they vanish into the night. Behind them, the SUV slowly follows. The city lights blur by as they drive, adrenaline coursing through their veins. Dr. Moore clutches the flash drive tightly, realizing it holds not just the truth about Dr. Cole's fate, but perhaps the last piece of evidence capable of exposing the entire conspiracy. What started as a surgery has become something far bigger, a battle between truth and those who would bury it, one life at a time. The storm outside had turned into a violent roar by the time drive. Harris reached the edge of the old city morgue. His flashlight flickered weakly, barely cutting through the darkness that seemed alive around him. The morgue had been abandoned for years, ever since the hospital's basement renovations had uncovered the sealed-off wing. The same wing where Michael Carter had once worked before disappearing in 2012. Harris' pulse thudded in his ears as he forced open the rusted doors. Inside, the air smelled of decay and formaldehyde. Dust covered every surface, but the metal tables were still there, lined up like silent witnesses. He stepped deeper in, his light sweeping across the walls until it caught something, a set of surgical instruments, gleaming unnaturally clean. Then he saw it, a fresh operating table with restraints, medical notes scattered nearby written in Carter's handwriting. Every word was dated, and the most recent entry was from just 2 weeks ago. Harris felt his breath hitch. How could that be possible? Carter was declared legally dead. Suddenly, a metallic clatter echoed from the far corner. He turned, flashlight trembling, and saw a shadow shift behind a glass cabinet. Moving closer, he found a door slightly ajar leading to a hidden corridor. The smell grew stronger, antiseptic mixed with something rotten. He followed it until the light revealed a wall covered in photos, surgeries, patients, and beneath them, Carter himself, older, gaunter, but unmistakably alive. The last photo showed a patient lying unconscious on a table, and on the patient's chest, a gloved hand placing an ID card with Carter's name on it. Before Harris could process it, footsteps echoed behind him. Slow, deliberate, scraping the floor. He turned to see a figure in a blood-stained surgeon's coat, mask hanging loose, eyes hollow yet burning with recognition. "You shouldn't have come here," the man rasped, voice low and broken. The flashlight flickered again, and when it steadied, the figure was gone. Only the ID card remained, lying at Harris' feet, still wet with something dark and fresh.